Alright guys, I hope you're doing okay. Hope you're all well. I wanted to just come on here and just kind of go through a bit of an odd topic today, if I'm honest. It's not something I don't think I've touched upon too much on my channel before, as far as I'm aware. And that is my kind of relationship with the church or Christianity. I grew up in still a kind of predominantly Christian society, really, culture during the 90s and even into the 90s, I suppose. You used to see services on the TV and obviously at Christmas you'd have your Queen's speech and obviously you'd have your Easter kind of stuff and it run alongside the more kind of, these things kind of run alongside the mainstream sort of capitalist stuff. You had your chocolate eggs, obviously at Easter, and then you had your all your advertisements at Christmas time, and I remember seeing Toys R Us on the TV as a kid, and it was really it's a very interesting time. But there was always just kind of something I don't know in the back of my mind that just kind of I don't know, just always something that just always kind of bothered me about Christianity. And I just remember being at school, as much as I liked singing hymns and getting involved with your typical kind of Christian based sort of. I remember the Harvest Festival at school, and the Easter Bonnet parade and all that kind of stuff. And as much as I loved all that stuff, I think in the back of my mind I don't think I ever truly ever really felt like I was I just never truly felt like I was Christian at heart, really. I remember we had a vicar called she wasn't just a vicar, she was like a kind of community leader, I suppose, in a way. Her name was Sue, and she used to come to our school, and sort of every so often she'd do some fun activities with the kids, and she used to hand out sweets from time to time and things like that. And to be fair, she was really quite a lovely woman, really, in many respects. And I got to know her a bit more as time went on, because obviously she was the vicar at the main church on the estate where I lived. Isn't it typical when I start a video, the rain starts? I just can't make these things up. I hope I don't know if I think I've mentioned it before, but I'm actually using my Facebook to make these videos. I'm actually doing Facebook Lives and then downloading these videos onto my iPad and then putting them onto YouTube, so I just hope the connection holds up. I hope you can hear me better on this video, by the way, because I have put the enhancements on. I actually forgot to do them until halfway through the last video I did yesterday, so I do apologise for that. But anyway, Christianity was a bit of a strange kind of. I had a bit of a strange relationship with Christianity, I suppose, as a kid and a teenager. On the one hand, it was kind of a part and parcel of just sort of school life in many respects, and like I said, we used to sing hymns. I think it was twice a day, if I'm not mistaken. We had I think we usually I can't remember. Maybe I might be wrong here, but we might have had 2 assemblies a day. One in the morning and one in the, because I think we used to do the register first, and then we used to have the assembly, and then or maybe sometimes we had an assembly in the afternoon for some reason. I can't really remember now. But anyway, this vicar, she used to come to the school, and she's, you know, like obviously spread her message of Christianity, and, you know, obviously trying to teach the youngsters about, you know, sort of ethics and morals, I guess, and the teachings of Christ, and we sort of, I suppose we kind of like sniggered a little bit, and we kind of like laughed and sort of joked and mocked a little bit as kids do, you know. We kind of didn't really take it seriously. But as later on, when I started to spend more time at my grandmother's house in the, I think early to mid 2000s, I was going to, like, I used to go to the local church where that vicar was. It was the parish of St Hilda's, and as much as I liked, her name was Sue Sheriff. She was a vicar at the time there, and it just always kind of, I don't know, I had a bit of a difficulty trying to like connect with her, I suppose, in some ways, because like I thought she was really quite nice, but at the same time she sometimes came across as a bit kind of, I don't know, just to me she seemed a bit two-faced sometimes, seemed a bit false, and I don't know, but it's kind of beside the point really. But I saw her on a funnily enough, I came across it yesterday on a YouTube video, and for some reason or other, it just kind of like lots of memories just started coming back to me, and like I was just having a bit of a moment where I used to myself for some reason. I don't know what happened, but it just kind of triggered me emotionally, and kind of just I don't know where it came from. It's kind of a bit random really, and I don't know. It was just kind of sort of brought back some sort of suppressed emotions and thoughts, I guess, memories about the past, and you know, I was kind of thinking about church and what it represented, I suppose, to me at the time, and why I kind of fell out of love, I suppose, in a way, with Christianity and the church. Because there was a time when I used to go to church, and I suppose part of me kind of like sort of partially bought into the whole thing, but not quite. I don't think I can ever really say I was a true believer. I was more of a kind of skeptic, I suppose. I was more of a sort of cautious believer. I didn't really know. I didn't really fit in terms of like the dogmatic side of things, but I liked the atmosphere of it. I liked the sense of community. I liked the sense of like familiarity, and that it was a source of comfort, because it was something that there was a sense of like solitude, and a sense of tranquility, and maybe some form of like self-therapy in a sense, because there was this, and I didn't realise it at the time until years later, that it had this like ASMR quality to it, you know, especially during like the communion services. I always loved those for some reason. I just always found them to be really relaxing, and you know, as a teenager, quite special really. I kind of liked all of it. I liked the waiting there in the church for the vicar to sort of start, because she'd be getting prepared, and obviously the congregation would be there waiting, or people would be coming in and settling down and getting something to drink quickly or whatever, and you know, going to the toilet and maybe helping out in the church with something. And I just really like the atmosphere of it, and yeah, just yesterday it kind of like triggered something in me that just kind of made me upset, like really, really set me off for some reason. I don't know why, but I just found it really emotional, man. It was like, I haven't felt like that in years, if I'm honest. It was really quite emotional, but yeah, kind of uplifting in a way. It was almost like my mind was saying, like, you know, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, and I do tend to do that on my videos, and I do apologise, but sometimes I need to kind of add something to what I'm saying before I get back to the main point. But yeah, it was just something that, I don't know, I just felt like it was like I needed to heal part of me or something. You know, sometimes it's kind of good to kind of reminisce and be able to just kind of like just go back and think some things over and see if you can make sense of things. And anyway, yeah. It was a communion service that this woman I mentioned. She was doing a communion service in a different. Obviously, she moved on to a different part of the country since the time I was at church nearly 20 years ago now. So, you know, but to be fair, she was pretty nice to me and my uncle and my late grandmother, who used to go to church, and she was always relatively pleasant, I think, and for the most part. But she just, I think what triggered me probably yesterday was I could see that. I know I'm going on a bit of a kind of whirlwind of different things here, but I think what triggered me was like I saw something in her, like I saw some pain in her eyes. I saw that she was going through something. I haven't seen her in years, you know, I haven't seen her in person, or I spoke to her during the pandemic. I won't go into that, but I did speak to her at one time, not that long ago really. And, you know, I just always felt that she was... I think what triggered me was that I felt a sense of guilt, I think. I felt a sense of regret that maybe I had misunderstood her. Maybe I hadn't... Maybe I just feel like sometimes I've just been too harsh on people. You know, I've really been... I haven't always been, like, polite and nice and... I don't mean that in like talking to people. I just mean in the way that I thought about people before. And I always try and be like well mannered and polite and, you know, considerate and understanding and empathetic. But, you know, there's just some times where I just catch myself, you know, kind of wondering, you know, is it all, you know, I just part of me was just like, you know, is it just that. I don't know. I just thought that I had all sorts of like thoughts going through my head yesterday, like thinking about, you know, what it must be like to have that kind of a job, that like kind of a life. And imagine if like you just wake up one day and sometimes I don't know. It's just when I saw her, I was looking at her eyes and obviously she's going through some pain or something, because she's not. I don't think she, from what I remember of her, she wasn't like that. So it's obvious she's going through something, because her body language was... She just seemed a bit kind of somber and a bit less buoyant than she used to be, from what I remember. I don't know if I'm misremembering things or she genuinely is going through something. But I think what it just kind of... Something just like has happened, and I was just like thinking, imagine if you just wake up one day, you know, 30, 40 years into your career or your job, whatever, as a vicar or a clergyman, whatever, you know, working as part of a church or a chapel or a cathedral, whatever, and like you just like have a realization that like you've been living a lie. Or imagine if you just no longer having faith in your faith. And I think, like, for some reason that was just like bothering me, because it made me kind of think about the fact that I've never really had any faith in religion. I never really felt like I connected with anything in terms of like any kind of theological a stance or belief, or I don't know. I wanted to believe. I really did. I wanted to have. Who doesn't want to have some? Who doesn't want to have a belief that there's some power, some special kind of thing? I don't know what you would describe it as, really, but something that you can hold on to and believe, and you genuinely convinced by it, And I remember being at church sometimes during the 2000s, and I used to just find myself thinking, like, this is just a load of nonsense, really. I just didn't connect with it. I just couldn't. I don't know. There's just something in me that just wouldn't let me believe, and I think yesterday I figured what it was, and that was that I didn't have any justification to believe in it. I didn't feel like I couldn't bring myself to believe in it because I didn't see this, like, I couldn't see the logic in it. I couldn't see the rationality in it. Like, I couldn't see how somebody like me, who was being bullied and was dealing with domestic abuse at home, and growing up where I grew up, and all the problems that were around my area, and I just didn't see any reason to have any faith. I didn't see any reason to believe in anything. And I suppose, like, I almost felt like I was more mature than my years, really, because I just felt like a lot of people that went to church, even I remember thinking this as a 14, 15-year-old kid, like, just how desperate some of these people must be, just how lonely, how lonely and in pain a lot of these people must be to, I don't know, like I said, I wanted to believe in it. I was in too much pain psychologically, emotionally, I think, to really put my faith in something that, as far as I was concerned, didn't exist, didn't help me, didn't seem to care about me, and so I think that's kind of where I just started to become detached from the whole thing. I became disillusioned, and I just became. I really just went to church, I think, just for the sake of respecting my grandma's wishes, really. Respecting my uncle and my grandmother's faith, because that meant a lot to them. And it's not like I didn't consider it. There was even a time where I remember, like, I used to call it, like, praying. Like, I used to, I used to, like, every now and again, like, when I was out on my own somewhere, I'd, like, just kind of, like, stop somewhere and, like, if there's, like, sometimes I'd go out, like, up to the port, the docks area, and look out across the river and just kind of pray. And I was so desperate to believe in something. I was so desperate to want to find something that I felt was real, was true, and I just never really felt like I found it. And I think even now, like, as I'm 35, like, I still don't feel like I don't know if I've really found anything. I think they're probably, in some ways, the closest thing to something that I believe in, probably, is the Black Pill movement, if I'm being honest. Because I resonate with it so much, I see how, because you're not putting your faith in something like that. It's just reality, It's not just something that you hope that's true, It's not just something that you want to be real. It's something that is real. I really wanted to believe in something. It's like at one time I almost thought I was a Buddhist, and I don't know, it just bothers me sometimes. I just feel like I was, I don't know, I just never really felt like I've always felt like an outcast. I've always felt this sense of, I just never really fit, I just don't ever seem to feel like I fit in anywhere with people. I always seem to be the odd one out. I always seem to be the one that's like seen as some kind of threat. And I remember that I'd been in the church, and I remember like sometimes like Sue, I think she felt in some way kind of threatened by me somehow. You know, she felt intimidated by me in some way. And I think it's because she knew that she couldn't break me into the mold that she wanted, I suppose. I don't mean that in some sort of like controlling, you know, megalomaniac type. I don't mean like that. I just mean that she couldn't. She knew that she was wasting her time with me because she knew that I just wasn't. I just didn't have. I wasn't aligned with the things that she believed in. I wasn't aligned with her deep held beliefs about her, in her mind, her God, you know, her heavenly Father, you know. It's like, and I don't know. It's just, you know, maybe I'm just going through a bit of a midlife crisis. I don't know what's happened to me, but yeah, it just really got to me yesterday. Like, I haven't felt like that for a very long time. I don't know what's going on there really, because I haven't thought about some of that stuff in a very long time, and properly anyway. I mean, maybe it's unresolved like trauma or something. It's unresolved like, you know, emotional baggage or something somewhere for some reason, and it's probably because I think what it was maybe is that I wanted to feel like I belonged to a tribe of people, and I don't think that I do. You know, I've been looking, I suppose, in many ways for. You know, we're all like that for the most part. We want to believe in something. We want to connect to something. We want to fit in, and we want to believe in something higher and more powerful and more intellectual and more interesting than what we are, what this planet can offer, you know. And I think part of the reason that I liked going to church was that it had this familiarity to it, and probably because of my sort of function in autism, which is what I think it is. I don't know if I have an element of ADHD. I don't know, but it's obvious that I've definitely dealt with a lot of issues related to depression, and I think probably identity. A lack. I feel like I probably don't feel like I have a real identity. I feel like an individual, but I don't feel like I have an identity. As weird as as strange as that is to say, because, you know, I'm a free thinker. Or at least I think I am. I try to be. You know, I like to be critical and analyse things and come to my own conclusions, my own thoughts and opinions, feelings, or whatever. And I think just when I used to go to church, I think probably what it was this sense that I didn't want to be. I just didn't feel like I could conform to something that I just couldn't see the logic in it. I don't know what else to say really. I just didn't see what other people saw in it. I didn't connect with it in other ways people did. And it's not about age, because there were other people there that were younger than me, that were slightly older than me. You know, that's my dog Muyon. Leave one there on the chair is Hen. But yeah, you know, I really did want to believe in something. You know, I really genuinely did. And I don't know why. It just really bothers me, because I think that's why I've been so happy in my life for so long. Is that I never felt like I found my people, found my tribe. I never found something to give me a reason to be happy. You know, gave me a reason to be positive and optimistic about the world and to have hope. And I've just always felt bogged down by being myself. I've always felt like I just never really felt like I fitted into this world. Like as if somehow I don't know, I was just born the wrong way or something. You know, I was just, my general makeup is incompatible with the way that the world is. Sometimes I feel like I'm not the right kind of person for the system that I belong to, for the country that I was born in, for the society that I'm supposed to conform to. And I suppose in regards to Christianity, I just couldn't see why should I conform to this? Why should I believe in it? Why should I sacrifice my other parts of my life for something that I don't truly believe in? And so I think I couldn't bring myself to live a life that I felt was alive for me. I couldn't bring myself to live a life that I felt wasn't honest and wasn't, I just couldn't see myself living a life that, for as much as I want to believe in something, I just can't. I can't do it. Don't get me wrong, if you check my channel out, you'll see recently that I put up some Christmas compilation things, and I absolutely love Christian, sort of the choral tradition of Christmas music in England, especially. I love certain Christian worship, but I just didn't feel like I could truly be a believer. As I said, I think honestly, I just preferred really the comfort of it, the sense that I think I liked going to church because it gave me the sense that it was a moment of solitude. It was a moment of it gave me the sense of like I was safe and I was free from the outside world for an hour, 1 hour and a half or 2 hours, however long the service was, every Sunday, and it was nice to talk, to see regular faces, and sit down and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with people from the local community, and I just felt an hour or two just kind of try and get along, and just if you can't get along with people in the church, where can you get along with people? I suppose. Not that that's how it should be, but often, in many respects, that is often the case, and that people are on their best behaviour when they go to their particular place of worship. That's just how it is. Which in a way is I suppose it's nice that people try to be put on their best behaviour, but at the same time it just always kind of felt a bit kind of false, because there were people there that probably didn't like each other, but not that it matters so much, but I always liked the thing of like sharing peace with each other, like shaking each other's hands, and during communion service, and then obviously the communion at part of the service itself was, going to the altar and getting a blessing from the vicar, or getting, obviously if you've been baptized, and obviously you can go and get communion, and you get that little piece of bread, and the wine, a small sip of wine, and I don't know. I always liked this ritual aspect to it. This, like I said, this very cozy, sort of secluded, very comforting act of and this experience. I think just in general, this experience of sharing it with other people, and for that 1 hour, it felt like we were all friends. It felt like we all cared about each other. We all loved each other in a way. And I think what triggered me yesterday is that I missed that. I missed that sense of being around people that are sharing a similar experience. Because I haven't, in all honesty, I haven't really done anything around many other people for quite a long time now. I mean, I've basically been on my own, in my own head for so long that I don't even know what it's like to be around other people anymore. I don't even know if I could tolerate it anymore. I don't even know what it's like to not until sort of a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking, maybe I should try and, give it another shot of the whole Christianity thing, and reading the Bible maybe, and maybe, attending, attending sort of online services and stuff. But then I was just, the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, you don't believe in this, dude. You don't really believe in it. I just came to the conclusion that it just doesn't. It just, to me, none of it really makes any sense. Not only just because of the immorality of the world, but just because, where was God when I needed it, him, her, the thing, whatever? Where was it then? Where was it when I was being picked on, bullied, and assaulted at school? Where was it? Where was this thing when I was dealing with issues at home? And where was it when I was going through my own struggles, my own pains, my own battles? Where was it? I didn't see any signs of it. I've never had any visitations from this mystical being, this so-called super, beyond the realms of all known physics entity. It's like, I don't know. I of course, I'd love to sit here and tell you, I'm a Christian, or a born-again Christian, or a man of faith, or something like that. But I'm not. I'm a broken individual with regrets and guilt and plenty of mistakes behind me, and parts of myself I'm not particularly proud of, and don't particularly like. And I'm just a normal human being, but like everybody else, with a lot of flaws, with darker parts of my personality and mental framework, like most people. I struggle with my mental health. I struggle with intrusive thoughts, with dark thoughts, and I think part of me felt that I just didn't feel worthy enough, I suppose, in a way, I didn't feel like I was worthy to be a Christian. I didn't feel like I was worthy even really to even go to church sometimes. I'm as they like to say at church, a sinner. I am a sinner, who hasn't had lustful thoughts, who hasn't had, thoughts of doing things that are malicious and intrusive thoughts that if you ever truly were honest about them, would probably land you in prison or would land you in some psychiatric unit or something like that. And I think part of me just felt that because of those things, I just didn't feel like I could. I think I was just riddled with guilt. I was riddled with this sense that I'm not deserving enough of it. I'm not. I'm not special. I'm not. It's like, and I think sometimes that kind of bothered me about church is that there's people there that are going through the run all the time. You can see it in the faces. You can see it in them. They're all a lot of it. So it tends to be, for the most part, people over a certain age, and certainly in the UK anyway. And you can just see it that there's a lifetime of regrets written all over the face. There's sadness. You can see it in their eyes. You can see that they've had difficult lives, that they've had complicated existences. And I just kind of felt suffocated by it sometimes, being at church. I felt suffocated by it, and I don't think I could do that job because I don't think I could handle everybody else's emotional baggage, everybody else's psychological baggage all the time. And it must be so exhausting to have to, even though you probably you love what you do, but it must be extremely demanding. It must be extremely difficult to have that life where people look to you for comfort and support, for help, for advice, for a sense of brief, escapism from the realities of their lives. And I just don't think I could do it, really. Of course, I feel for people. I really do. Of course, I have a lot of empathy, but for most people, regardless of what religion you follow, whatever, as long as you try and be a decent person, I have empathy for it. Life's hard. It's very difficult. It's a whirlwind of mistakes and learning and constant change, and I suppose the church really is a symbol of like a rock, isn't it? It's a symbol of this thing that doesn't. It does change, but it doesn't change. There's always elements of it that don't really change, and I can see. I get it, man. I understand that. I know. I get why people feel that the church for them is more than just a building. It's more than just a series of, rituals and pieces of, garments and clothing and books and symbolism. I understand. It's for some people. It's a lifeline. They've got nothing else. They really haven't got anything. They need this thing, or they feel it. They do anyway, because they're suffering with untold amounts of, I don't know whatever they're going through. Whatever they've been through in their life. And for some people, it might be that they've lost a child. Some people have lost their partner. Some people have just suffered with their identity, their sexuality, their mental health, I don't know, just everything really. And I gotta be honest with you, this is not an easy video to make. It's quite an emotional one. This. I don't know. I just yesterday, I just kind of felt this overwhelming sadness, really. I felt this sense of grief for some reason, this sense of loss, this sense of, that used to be me, that used to be part of my life at one time. And I just feel like I don't know, I just felt like I had to walk away from it. I just didn't feel like I didn't feel connected to it anymore. I suppose maybe part of it was a sense of pressure because of where I grew up. And my brothers weren't Christians, my parents weren't Christians. I really mainly went to church because I didn't want to feel like I was being disrespectful to my late grandmother and my uncle Stephen at the time. And I miss it. I really do. I miss that part of my life. I miss the more innocent times. I miss a time when I didn't know as much about life and the world and people and myself even. Or I didn't even really know myself yet. I didn't even really. It was just so much more. I just felt so much more energy in those days. I felt so much more alive than I do now. I don't know, I just don't feel like I've really been alive for a long time, mentally, emotionally. I certainly haven't been living for a very long time. And yeah, just seeing that old vicar of mine and communion service yesterday, it was seeing the candles and listening to the hymns and just the general atmosphere of it really, the old kind of vibe of it was just something that I always connected with it. I always felt, in terms of the atmosphere, I always enjoyed that aspect of it, but I never felt that the things that she was talking about were I don't know, I didn't really think, I suppose I didn't really know what to think of it. I think I kind of leant more towards, I leant towards skepticism, I think. I didn't completely I don't think I completely just kind of lost my faith, or rather my rocky potential of faith, until I don't know really, maybe somewhere around about the age of 14, 15. There are reasons for that which I won't go into, but yeah, I think that beyond really after 2004 time, for me, I just couldn't see myself going to church anymore, really. For the most part, I think I went now and again. I think it was more of a every now and again situation for a while, but then somewhere around about 2006, 7 time, I basically stopped going altogether, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And then obviously my late grandmother passed away in 2008, so that came to an end. And that was the end of that chapter, really. And the vicar moved away in 2000, I think it was 2006 anyway. So, and the vicar that replaced her wasn't quite the same way. So, yeah, it was. I don't know. It's weird because I've just always had a kind of complicated relationship with people. I've always had a bit of a messy time trying to trust people, and I think ultimately I just felt like I couldn't trust what she was saying. I just think that my gut instinct and my intuition was stronger than the things that she was talking about, really. And probably a lot of it was down to the fact that I couldn't trust. I didn't trust my parents. I didn't trust the people around me. I grew up on a very difficult. I grew up in a very tricky situation. it's all I can really say. I think it wasn't perhaps the worst in the world, but it certainly wasn't. It really wasn't ideal. That is true. And I think that inability to truly trust people, I think that really just drove a wedge between me and religion. And I never really had any real belief in faith ever again after that. Yeah, I went through a phase a few years ago where don't get me wrong, over here I sometimes go to the temple with my wife, but it's not something that I would go out of my way to do. Maybe at some point when I get older, and maybe something will change in me, and I'll go to church, perhaps out of desperation, maybe, or just if I'm diagnosed with something, perhaps, or just as a kind of last ditch effort to kind of, I don't know. It's, but I get it, man. I get why people cling on to things. I get why people get so passionate about what they do, and because it's sometimes that's all you've got in this world, man. I'm telling you, that's all you've got. All you've got is what you're into, what you're interested in. And if you haven't got faith, then you overcompensate for it in other ways, whether it's in gaming, whether it's in sport, whether it's in dating or sex or gambling, drug abuse, being a workaholic. All of that effort goes into something that you feel you can believe in, something that you feel you can rely upon, because there's so many things in this world that you can't. Yeah, it's almost kind of like it's essentially, as far as I can tell with religion anyway, I think more than anything else, I think really it's a coping mechanism. It's a real lifeline for some people, because they've been through so many things that, and it's obviously part of it's down to the way you grow up as well, the society and culture you grow up in, and how that influences, and obviously your experiences and everything. And especially if you grow up in a place where, like, I grew up in I was educated in a Church of England primary school, and then I suppose to some extent it was sort of like that secondary in a way, but predominantly the primary school was more of a religious school at that time. I don't know if it still is now, but that's all changing now, though. It's probably more of a kind of multi-faith school now, so everything's really changed. And just the culture of society of the UK has changed. I can't really say it's predominantly Christian anymore. It doesn't seem like it to me. It doesn't feel like it anymore. Not that I really care. I'm not a Christian, am I? I think what I did end up developing into was this agnosticism, or what do you want to call it? I became an agnostic. I didn't know what to believe in. I don't know if there's anything I can believe in, but I couldn't dismiss things entirely. But I just never felt I never gravitated towards anything. That's the truth. I gravitated towards music. I gravitated towards comedy. I gravitated towards being a bus enthusiast, a train enthusiast, an aviation enthusiast, and that's basically it. I'm a pretty boring person. Which is not a surprise to some people for me to say that, but I really am not. It's like I've got a lot to say about a lot of things, but as a character, as a personality, I think I'm probably what a lot of people have thought about there. I'm kind of pretty dull, pretty somber, kind of mood killer maybe, and I don't mean to be. It's just that that's just kind of who I am naturally. It's just I always, and I think I suppose in a way like recently I've been thinking a lot about space and what might be out there in the galaxy and other parts of the universe, and I've been obsessed with that for some reason recently, really obsessed with it all. And I go through these periods of like obsessions with certain topics or themes or interests, and I just can't seem to let them go. You know, I just like say, you know, I don't know if I have OCD or not, I don't know, but I just sometimes have these period times where like I watch the same content over and over again, the same shorts on YouTube, the same videos, the same content creators, you know. But just every now and again, you know, I always go back to watching these live stream church services and stuff. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I want to. I think there's almost like a part of me that feels like I need to connect with it. You know? And I watched a lot of like spirituality stuff with like John Butler and meditation type things. There was a time where I was like really into that whole binaural beats thing, you know, the sort of chakra, you know, the sort of all that kind of stuff, and the symbols. And I went through a bit of a phase of sort of pseudo Buddhism, I guess you'd call it. And so I think I've always had this sense of longing for something, and I think it's because there were things that weren't there in my childhood, in my teenage years, that I needed. That weren't. I think I was looking for things in others or in the things I was interested in, and I didn't realise it. So a lot of it was obviously subconscious, that I think were missing from the dynamic that I had with my parents. I think that's probably the reality of it. I think it didn't feel. I don't think I ever really felt like I really. I don't know. I never really felt like my home was my home, and I think that's why I spent so much time outside of it. But I didn't really feel like. Well, it was my home, but it didn't feel like home. For a lot of the time, it just felt like walking on broken glass. It felt like walking on eggshells, and I don't know. It just really bothered me. These kind of things. It just really gets to me sometimes. This stuff, you know, just. You know, I understand my parents had their own problems and everything, and they didn't exactly probably have the most ideal upbringings themselves in many ways, but yeah, it's just. I only mention that because I think that probably plays into this whole thing. It's a part of it. I fear anyway. I feel and I fear is a part of the truth of it. Why I didn't feel like I could connect with partly what drew me to the church, but also what ended up driving me away from it. But I felt that I was always on guard, always suspicious, always skeptical, always. I just felt like I could never relax. I've always felt like I was being manipulated in some way. And so I suppose a lot of it comes down to the sense of like being a bit rebellious and anti-authority, and just, I don't know, I just wanted to kind of carve up my own path. You know, I wanted to believe what I felt was true to myself. You know, what was I couldn't believe, I couldn't follow a lifestyle that I didn't truly, genuinely feel was true for me. And, you know, people used to like seeing me at the church. I was quite popular there. And I got confirmed there at the church in, I think it was 2004 or 5, I think it was. And so, yeah, I was still there until I think 06 or something like that. And then, obviously, Sue Sheriff left, and then So a few friends of mine left there. Nathan, I think he left at some point. Phil and Sonia, who were there at the time, I think they left in '06. So there was a real change in the whole dynamic, in the people that attended the church, and then later on I ended up actually going back to the church, but not as a member of the congregation, but a member of the choir of this, what is now essentially a cathedral, Hull Minster, what has been labelled Hull Minster, or it was before, at that time that I was there, it was Holy Trinity Church, which really should have been designated as a minster or a cathedral, I think, because it's the largest parish church in the country, and its size, to me, it really, I think, not that it's always about that, but I think it should have really been, the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity or something like that. But so anyway, I was a member of the choir there for I think 2 or 3 years. I sang first bass and baritone, I guess. And I enjoyed that because and I think because it gave me a reason to go back to the church, but it wasn't this sense that I was being preached at, that I was being condescended to in some way. I was being looked down, literally at. I wasn't being looked down as a sinner. I wasn't being judged or criticised. I was just there, and I don't know. I felt maybe a lot more at home as a member of the choir rather than being a member of the congregation, although there was a lot of this sort of subtle classism stuff going on, and that's partly kind of what drove me away from that in the end. And also I just kind of outgrew it, I think, if I'm being honest. I'd done it, we'd done the trips, we'd even been on TV, so it was good while it lasted, but I think in the end, one of my friends left eventually, and so that a friend of the choir at least, I used to see at the choir. And yeah, just in the end, it just didn't really work out, and I was just kind of getting bored of it and frustrated, and it was just people just wouldn't turn up as well, you'd go to practices, and then on Sunday, half of the people that were there at the practice didn't turn up, and so I just got tired of it. I got tired of putting in the effort and other people weren't doing the same, and so that inevitably came to an end, and I think I went back to the Minster, as it's now known, Hull Minster, I think twice maybe, after I'd left, just at Christmas services, and that was it. It's I quite like the Christmas services against that atmosphere stuff. I think I like that. I also do like the singing of the carols and things like that. I think it's more of the tradition, the atmosphere, the experience, rather than the belief. I think a lot of people like, and I certainly like anyway, so then we get to it there. But I do sometimes think a lot of the time it's not so much about the belief, it's more just about the sense of companionship, I suppose, temporary companionship, temporary brief respite from loneliness, and the sense of a community, and trying to make yourself feel better about your life and who you are and your mistakes. It's just a kind of clean slate, isn't it? It's a break away from normality. It's a break away from the stresses and strains of being yourself and dealing with all the stuff that you got going on in life, as well as all the stuff you've got in your head, and all the mistakes and regrets and guilt and insecurities, etc. I think church really it's a place of, it's like a little heaven on earth, isn't it? Really, I suppose. For a lot of people, it's this space of, it's a non-judgmental space for the most part. It's a space where everyone's equal, everyone's treated with respect. Whereas out in the outside world, you don't get, people are always criticising, judging you. being presumptuous, being rude or ignorant, arrogant, unpleasant, intolerant, etc. And the church is really the antithesis, is that the right word, of the outside world. It's the so like I said before, I really do understand why people feel like they are for some reason or other drawn to the church, or why. I think for a lot of people as well, it becomes a habit, it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes their life, really, in many ways. And as I said, I can understand why for some people it just becomes everything. It is their identity. It is literally their life. And for me, it wasn't. It just wasn't. And like I said, I think that the vicar, she picked up on that. She knew that, and I think she probably knew why as well. In hindsight, looking back, and I think she knew something was a bit off with me. Something wasn't quite right. Something was obviously going on. But these are things. You can tell at church when sometimes you see people come into church and be upset about something. Sometimes I remember even seeing the vicar herself upset. I think one of the parents was ill. Or she was ill, or she died or something. I can't remember. I think she was ill at the time. And so to me, if you want to see the very best of humanity, go to one of your local places of worship and in your vicinity. But if you also want to see every now and again just how raw people's emotional states are, and just how messy and just how utterly broken a lot of people truly are, you only have to go to your local church to see it, really. Church, you can learn a lot from going to church, even if you don't necessarily believe. It can be, and maybe in some ways, sometimes that. Now I was thinking about that, maybe I should just go to church for the atmosphere, the experience, and that while it's not technically there's nothing wrong with that. I would feel a bit of a kind of imposter, really. I feel like I was living a lie and kind of making a mockery of the thing, and I don't really want to do that. So I think I felt that I needed to find something to replace it with, and that's kind of why I've always been interested in a lot of ASM artists and white noise stuff, because I think in some way it gives me that same sense of familiarity and comfort and stability and security, in a sense that, and I'm not in this sort of constant fight or flight state mentally. But I miss, I do miss the 2000s. I miss the 90s, the 2000s. I miss the people that I used to see, the people I used to talk to when I used to go to church, even if I wasn't technically a believer. I did listen to the sermons. I did sing along with the hymns, and I respected the church. I respected the people in it, and I was always usually very polite and willing to listen. But there were sometimes, every now and again, a sense where sometimes there was this sort of sense that some people were using the church in some way, and also that certain individuals who come into the church I always felt that some people were more welcome than others, even though the vicar's clergy is supposed to have a neutral stance towards everyone, really. But so I think there was an element of hypocrisy that bothered me, an element of performative empathy that bothered me as well about it. And anyway, that's pretty much all I've really got to say about it, I think, for the time being. So, thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you on another one soon. Thank you.